Thanks everybody for joining the call. Michael Neal is on with us today. He's out of Florida. So I'm going to do a brief introduction for him and then we'll jump right into it. So Michael Neal was born in Merrillville, Indiana. He attended Merrillville High School where he was first team All-State as a senior. Michael then attended Purdue University from 2005 to 2009. Neal was selected in the second round, 56 overall by the Green Bay Packers in the 2010 NFL Draft and went on to play 6 years in the league with the Packers, including Super Bowl 45. So what I'm excited to talk about Michael today is obviously his experience with football, but then also his transition from football life to real estate life and kind of where he's headed and what he's doing. So Michael, again, thank you very much for joining us. I know you got a busy day and you do a lot of these, so it's much appreciated.
Absolutely, man. It's never an issue. Hey, if it's for me to do, I'll do it. I mean, it's definitely a good story. I like to admit that first, but like I said, I don't have an issue with doing this, and this is definitely an honor. And I truly, truly appreciate you all for even considering me to have the opportunity to speak on your platform.
Awesome. Well, you're going to notice a lot of the guys here are from Utah. My network's growing. And so we do have a lot of people maybe joining from out of state, but I connected with you. Again, goes to the power of your network and you never know who you're going to meet. But Chris Strickland, who is kind of, a little bit of the Utah network, he got to know you a little bit and then he introduced you and me a couple of months ago. So that's how we got to know each other a little bit. So, but let's start from the beginning. And then we'll kind of lead into this and get to where you're at today, but talk a little bit about like just who you are, that I didn't cover in your bio.
Well, I think that you covered it pretty good. And I like to tell people all the time, what you see is what you get. I don't sugarcoat anything. I am who I am. I've had the pleasure of growing up in Indiana, like you said before, going to Merrillville High School, then going on to Purdue, where I redshirted my freshman year. And from that standpoint, was the NFL something that I look forward to? Absolutely. I think that Purdue was a great platform for me to be able to do so, with the history of the type of athletes that they actually put into the NFL. But from that standpoint, also being able to get a college degree. I did graduate from Purdue with 2 degrees, one in health and kinesiology, another is organizational leadership and supervision. And then I was drafted in the second round. And so right now I'm just doing a little bit of real estate investing or getting my feet wet into it. There's always such a big learning curve when you're doing something that you don't know. And this is a learning curve for me. I mean, my paths are different. I wanted to leave the NFL and actually wanted to go to doctorate school to become a doctor of chiropractic and then get a degree in physical therapy as well. But I had 3 kids and those doctorate programs are very, very lengthy. And I didn't have the time to be able to do that and be a full-time dad as well. So real estate investing became something that I was heavily interested in. And, this is where I'm at in this space of my life right now.
Oh, I love it. So talk a little bit about, I always, I'm curious about what your goals and vision was when you were growing up. Like, what was it like in your household? Was the expectation to go to college? Was it, like what was kind of that background like, and how did that prepare you for what you've encountered so far in your life?
I'm glad that you asked that question. So if you do any bit of a research and you know where I'm from, Gary, Indiana, and I have to be as blunt as possible, coming from that area and being Black, the opportunities to succeed in society doesn't present themselves quite often. And I think that the mentality was given to me from my parents and the inspiration to be everything that I've grown to be, because, I've come from a household of 5. There's 5 of us siblings. My parents have been married for 35 years now. My dad actually had the opportunity to play in the NFL in 1988 for the New York Giants. He was an undrafted free agent. He got hurt and his career got cut short. From there on in, he took a lot of jobs to support our family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't have a lot of income. We made $25,000 a year on paper.
Wow.
We lived in a very depressed area. But the thing about that is my parents have always done a very, very, very great job of supplying us not only above and beyond what we needed, but instilling a Christian-based background in my family. We've always been very, very, very heavy in church. And just the way that my parents took care of us, I would have never known that I was growing up in that type of depression when I was a child. And I think that was kind of my inspiration. Now, to get to college, honestly, where I'm from, if you live to see the age of 21 at that point in time, that was a big accomplishment. So going to college as a child wasn't something that was my aspiration. But I think that coming from Indiana, being a basketball state, I definitely wanted to be a basketball player. And I definitely wanted to go to NBA. And that didn't happen, obviously. But I think that, throughout life, from the time that I was living in Gary, from the time that I accepted my scholarship with Purdue, I've just always had this thing in me that I wanted to compete. I didn't care what it was. I didn't care about the NFL. I cared about competing. And I think that that's the biggest thing for me. Every single day I wake up and I'm in competition, but more so now of myself, is how much can I accomplish at this age and how far can I take it? So yeah, it's been great, man. I've definitely enjoyed it.
No, that's awesome. What, when did your kind of mind shift growing up? Like, okay, I can maybe do this. Like, I'm sure you realized you were pretty athletic early on. Did your parents push you to go to school or to pursue athletics, or was that just kind of, you just naturally kind of followed that path just due to your athleticism and your work effort?
I think it was more so work ethic, to be 100% honest with you. The good thing about my parents is they've always supported 100% of what we've done. So if I wanted to be the best student in school, they were going to support that 100%. If I wanted to be the best athlete, they were going to support that 100%. If I wanted to just go get a job cutting grass, which I did for a very long time, they supported that 100%. And but the way that they worked, like I said before, inspired me. But I think the tables turned kind of when I got into high school. And people don't know this. I'm very competitive to the soul, like very competitive to the soul. And it bothers me to lose at anything. When I was in third grade, I actually tried out for a travel basketball team and I got cut. And that right there, it stained me. And then it was very competitive. And that was my first year actually playing an organized sport, and I was hurt. So from that standpoint, I figured, I'll never lose again. I won't settle, and from that standpoint, that motivation and that determination kind of got built on. And then when I got to high school, a lot of people don't know I hated football. I could not stand football. I had no desire to want to play football. I had no desire to train for football. I had no desire to get hit or do any hitting. But I had a lot of friends that actually played, and they played at, they got into it and they enjoyed it, and they like, Mike, you should come out and play football. And I'm like, no, Mike don't want to play football. So after I jumped into football, I actually was really good at it because I was very competitive. I didn't like to lose. I didn't like to be last. And that kind of propelled me into that, just competitive nature. Then when I got into about my sophomore year of high school, I got moved up to varsity. And literally the first varsity game I played, I sacked the quarterback. He fumbled the ball. The other defensive end picked up the ball and ran in for a touchdown. And the rest was really history from that standpoint, because it was like, you could be really good at this. And then literally my junior year, offers start rolling in. And that's when the whole thing of you'll be able to play big time college football if you just keep along this path and keep your grades up. And that's when it all kind of, trickled into, Mike's going to college now. So that was good for me though.
So you hadn't played formal football until you got to high school? You had just been playing basketball up to that point?
Yeah, funny story. When I was 8, I was a lot bigger than most of the kids my age. So I got moved up to the 13-year-old bracket. I made a tackle, and everybody on the opposite team jumped on top of me. And I looked at my dad on the sidelines and I said, I never want to do this again. And the only thing he told me was I'm fine with that, but you're just not going to quit in the middle of the season. And I told him that was perfectly fine with me. So after 8 years old, I decided I never wanted to step back on the football field because I didn't want to get hit. So no, I didn't play any organized football outside of that until high school.
Well, that's crazy. And then it turns out that you were then just a beast on the field and inflicting a bunch of pain and punishment to people all around you. So you obviously got over that getting hit thing, right? You got maybe a little bit more aggressive or used to it. So was basketball maybe not quite taken off the way you were hoping? And then football you were just more of a natural at that in high school, or did you play basketball in high school as well?
I played basketball my first 2 years of high school. I played AAU basketball for a couple of years prior. And I really thought that I was going to be able to play basketball for a long time. I am a Kobe Bryant holic. I love Kobe Bryant. He's probably one of the biggest reasons why. I mean, I can tell you from times when I was watching Kobe when he first came into the NBA, actually recording his games on VHS cassettes, and my dad yelling at me like, you video recorded over our family reunion. And I'm like, oh God. And that's when I thought that I was going to actually be able to play in the NBA. But my sophomore year, I had a big decision to make. A lot of my friends played basketball. Some of them played football as well, but the coach for varsity told me, well, if you wanted to play basketball, you need to be lifting with basketball and not with football during the off season. So, I told him, I'm like, well, I want to play football too. He was like, well, you either playing football, you either playing basketball. And it was just my ultimatum. And I figured, what a less of a man to give me, one course or the other. And it kind of made me extremely angry. And I took that and rolled with it. I said, the hell with football, basketball. I'll go directly to football and I'll see what happens with that. But that's when I stopped playing. And it was tough for me. I went through a lot mentally my sophomore year because I grew up on basketball, but I kind of took that out on the football field too. So it worked out.
Yeah, no, clearly. All right, cool. So let's continue with this. I know, this will ultimately be a real estate call, and I can't wait to hear about how the habits you've learned up to now in your life through Purdue, through the Green Bay Packers are ending up benefiting you today in your real estate career. But I mean, everyone's a football fan, right? And especially the Green Bay Packers. I mean, there's just maybe a little bit of a following throughout the country with the Packers. But talk a little bit about Purdue, maybe some of the lessons you learned there and what that process was like, maybe being recruited and then playing for Purdue. And then we'll talk a little bit about your obviously your time in the NFL and the Super Bowl and all that cool stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I got brought in my freshman year. I had the red shirt. My dad kind of spoiled everything for me. Thought I was going into Purdue to be a defensive end. They were known as the den of defensive ends when I was coming out of high school. They put out a first or second round draft pick at defensive end every year prior to the year that I actually arrived on campus. So it was an easy decision for me. I had full-time offers from even like Washington State out there on the West Coast, all the MAC conference, a lot of the Big Ten schools. But Purdue was just more beneficial for me because my family was able to drive to the games. My family has always been the backbone of absolutely everything that I do. I get choked up when I talk about them, but so they, it was big for me to be able to just be within driving distance to make sure that they can attend as many home games as possible. And then I stepped on campus as a freshman, undersized. I had to gain, I was 245 pounds. They wanted me a defensive tackle, and you had to at least be 280 pounds. So I didn't take too kindly to being redshirted. I hated absolutely every single bit of it because my roommate actually started for Purdue as a true freshman. So I had to sit in the shadows of him, and that kind of drove me. I gained 40 pounds that off season. I made myself, play ready, and still it was a whole learning curve for me. So it was quite difficult for me when I first got there. But like I told you before, being the person that I am, the family that I've come from, my sophomore year, actually my redshirt sophomore year, I was walking on the campus, and what my roommate was on the side of a bus. And they advertised us, and I'm like, God, why can't I just get put in that position? And it was simply like God whispered in my ear and told me it's because you're not ready yet. And, I kind of took that, and I tell people that because I mean that. It was literally like it slapped me in the face. It was like, you're not ready, because what would you do if you had all that pressure? Would you still be able to succeed in school? Would your focus still be where it needs to be at? Could you handle the light of having all that publicity in college? on a big campus like that. I mean, there's, needless to say, it's easy to fall by the wayside because you get caught up in everything else that's not important. But I think coming into my junior year, I actually got the opportunity to play, and I did well. In my redshirt junior year, I started. My senior year, I started. And, you know, it was just a lot of hard work. I had a lot of surgeries, even when I was in college. It was setbacks. And I've had mountains of setbacks. And I can tell you that the only reason that I've succeeded is because I've had those setbacks. And I don't think that if I never had any of those setbacks and everything was given to me, I wouldn't have gotten as far as I've gotten today. So I'm very thankful for every setback that I have, every hardship that I go through. It's like I welcome those opportunities because it's just an opportunity for me to grow, put my own back against the wall. And I love competition and to see exactly what it is that I'm made out of.
No, that's great. That's great. So yeah, that, like you said, that probably helped you a ton. You coulda, shoulda, woulda. It'd be interested to go back and see if you started as a true freshman, if you'd end up where you're at today. You know, sometimes you do need to fail a bunch of times before you learn what you need to do. And what kind of things did you do to get ready while you were waiting and being patient? I mean, I think there's going to be some parallels to real estate investing here, where you do want to, you know, have all the assets and be doing a bunch of deals but you know, you're not ready yet, right? So you do need to learn. And what kind of things did you learn that gave you discipline, your habits while you're in that freshman, sophomore year to be prepared and be ready for your junior season?
I'm glad that you asked that because I think that there's a lot of parallels in between athletes and business, athletes, you know, building a career as an entrepreneur. And like you said, discipline. I think that there's things that even within a company that I'm trying to build now, when people ask me what my core values are, I can tell you that it was very humbling. And you have to be humble because if you're not, I've always lived by this. If you're not humble, you can't build a house on a foundation that's not solid. The house will topple over, the foundation is done, you're done. You have to be able to build a house on a solid foundation because even if that house gets blown over, that foundation is still there. You can always build on top of that foundation. And a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of crying, a lot of not understanding, but being persistent and being very consistent and then always being in pursuit of what the end goal was I know that I'm just this close and I'm not far off. And if I just do things a little bit differently, or if I mimic the success of the people that's in front of me and I watch what they do and I understand what they do and what makes them be able to be so great at what they do, I think that that's allowed me to always keep in the forefront, like, look, you just mimic what they did. They've already created the wheel. You don't reinvent it. You follow their process, you follow their system, and you just tweak a couple things. I'm not the same person as, you know, I mean, in the NFL, people might know who Clay Matthews is. He's one of my very good friends. I wasn't the same passer as Clay Matthews, and I didn't have the attributes as Julius Peppers, but what is it that I can contribute to the table coupled with what they do on a daily basis to keep themselves ready to play at a high performance level? What is it that I can do to keep myself in that realm? And that's always what I've done. And I tell my brother this, I do have a brother that plays for the Seattle Seahawks right now. He's a safety. And I tell him all the time, I said, this is your biggest thing, dare to be different. Everybody's gonna do something this way, but you have to do something completely different. You can't be the same athlete that Mike can go out and, you know, drink all the time and come play on Sunday. That's not who you are. You can't be that person. Be different, because the more that you actually put forward, the more effort that you give, the more discipline that you have, those are the things that will carry you through when times get hard. Those other people don't have that type of, you know, they don't develop those type of characteristics. So just that constant being in pursuit and having those failures and being able to be very strategic in your approach is one of the things that's always kept me, you know, just elevated at a very high level.
No, I love that. And I want to come back to that as we, you know, transition here into your real estate, because I'm sure that same mentality is paying off or going to pay off big time. I mean, I think of all the mentors in my life, and one of them just joined the call and he's muted, but he knows who he is. And you got to do that. You got to be looking up to people that you admire and that you want to be like and model what they do, but also adapting it to your own strengths and weaknesses. I mean, I see that all the time with real estate investing. You know, for example, flipping a house, there's good, better, and best, right? There's some guys that can do 20 at a time. And if you don't quite have the capabilities and the skills yet to get to his level, it's going to be really, really frustrating. And you may fail and walk away, but if you just say, all right, what little things can I learn from him? And maybe just do one house really good, and then you get better and kind of stay in your lane like you're talking about. But that last couple of minutes that you just said there, that's going to be the video clip for everyone to re-listen to, because that was gold. Okay, so you're getting some notoriety as a senior, right? And I mean, was it your dream along this time to play in the NFL, or were you just always focused on, man, I'm going to keep getting better and doing my thing, and we'll see where we end up?
I think the latter, what you just said, has always been me. I didn't really care about the NFL, to be 100% honest with you. I just wanted to be the best. I mean, no matter what it is that I did, I just wanted to be the best. And, going into my senior year, when the opportunities became, I petitioned the NFL when I was a junior. They told me I would be a 5th-round draft pick if I left. I'm like, okay, well, I need to at least get in the first 3 rounds to make sure I'm secure for a couple of years. So I decided to come back for my senior year. But like I told you, my family has been built on the foundation of faith, Christian people, and a lot of that came from my grandmother. And my grandmother was she was the backbone for our family. She kept a lot of things together financially, from the just standpoint of just being there emotionally, and just the physical presence of my grandmother meant a lot. But going into my senior year, my motivation, my grandmother was dying of cancer. And it was big for me because that was the first time I lost somebody that was really close to me. And my motivation was really, I just like, God, if I can make it to the NFL to give her the best care, I don't care about money. I mean, I've broke before, so money means nothing to me. I mean, I just want to, make sure my grandmother can make it. Needless to say, she passed in my bedroom at my house when I was going to my senior year, and that catapulted me through my senior year. I had one of the best seasons of my life, and I had some really great mentors along the way. My coach, who still coaches in the NFL right now, Terrell Williams, he's a defensive line coach for the Titans. He was my coach in college, and he pushed me. I mean, that man texts me every day at 5 o'clock in the morning in the off season. Are you still sleeping? Are you still dreaming? Are you working? And I don't sleep. And a lot of people know me. I don't sleep. I mean, you can text me at 3 o'clock in the morning and you will get a text back. I very rarely to this day sleep, but he texted me and said, are you working or are you dreaming? And, from that standpoint, it literally catapulted my senior year into the point where I was getting all 32 teams. They came to all my practices. I was getting scouted heavily, and I enjoyed every single last bit of it. And I put myself in position to be a 2nd-round draft pick. And it was literally from those people that, played those little roles in my life that put me in that position. And I'm forever grateful for that.
That's so cool. Like a lot of times people aren't in that world, like, me included. You think like, these guys are all chasing just the money or the fame or whatever. But you were just chasing your daily grind, right? Just trying to be better every day. And it ultimately got you to a pretty cool spot. So, all right. Talking about the NFL, you've probably done a gazillion of these interviews. What's the most beneficial thing you learned as a person or whatever, from your time in the NFL? Maybe it was the Super Bowl, maybe it was just playing with the same team for 6 years. Maybe it was the teammates. I mean, thinking back, what did you take the most from your time in the NFL? And by the way, thanks for sharing that about your grandma. That was really powerful.
Absolutely. If there's one thing that I have to tell people that I learned from the NFL, I've won a Super Bowl. I've played with Hall of Famers. I've started 4 years. I played 6 different positions in our defense. They couldn't get rid of me. But what I will tell you is the NFL built a lot of character for me. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what I wanted to do, the person that I would become, the type of character that was presented for me. What a lot of people don't know is I've had 13 surgeries. I'm 33 years old. I had 7 of them in the NFL. I've had a lot before the NFL. And every season, the odds were stacked against me. That is a business that they do not care. It's what have you done for me lately?
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL stands for not for long, for people that really don't understand what that means. And every offseason I was faced with, are you going to be able to play another season, or are we going to be trying to replace you, or, what is the situation? And for me, every single offseason, I had my back against the wall and I had to dig in deep to even get myself ready to play. And my last 4 years in the NFL, to be completely honest with you, was personally complete hell for me. I played my last 3 years with a bilateral sports hernia. And literally I had holes in my stomach. I could barely walk. I was a game time decision for the last 3 years, the last 10 games each year. But I will tell you, I never missed a game. I started every single last one of them. And I think that I learned about my why. Why did I do what I did? And people ask me all the time, like, why didn't you just retire earlier? You had a lot of money. I had 2 parents. My mom was diagnosed with cancer. She was in a very bad position herself. And I had brothers, and my dad was the only person that was working. My family didn't make a lot of money. And so for me, just being able to sustain what I sustained meant a whole hell of a lot more to me than any fame or fortune that could ever bring me. And that literally, the only thing I could ever ask for was if I can be the backbone for my family that my grandmother was for me, then I've done something that, I can live with. And the accolades, I love them. I love everything about the NFL. I love everything that it's given me, the doors that it's opened. But I think that pulls something out of me, because what you don't realize is you retire from that league young, and that money doesn't last forever. And if you don't develop traits and characteristics that can propel you into another career, 80% of the people that play in the NFL leave divorced and broke in 3.5 years, or actually 3.25. And that's not even before they make pension. So you have to beat the odds, and those are the odds that are stacked up against you. And I like to say that I beat those odds, man, and I made it out great. So I'm very thankful for absolutely everything, but more so just the person that it turned me into.
No, and you're beating it for sure. So what's the difference in a person that is on either side of the 20% or the 80%? From your observation, when you were in the league, you'd see people come in, you'd see people leave. Now that you're out for a little bit, you probably have a little bit of a different perspective. What is the difference? Is it a character trait? Is it a mindset? Is it, if you could pinpoint something, what makes that difference between, because you guys are all super athletic, like you had to work really, really hard to get to the NFL. So the work ethic was there. Is it a mindset? What is it that is the difference? Is it discipline?
It's all of the above. I mean, you have to think about this. When you're 20 and 21 years old and you're in college, you're partying, you get dumped a lot of money. Whenever you get money, the things that you do, and Chris Carter, I don't know if anybody on the call knows who Chris Carter is. He was a famous wide receiver for Minnesota Vikings for a long time. Chris Carter said one thing that stood out to me my rookie year. Whenever you make money, money just escalates problems. And if you don't really understand that money can escalate a problem, or if you have an addiction, money can escalate that, you'll lose money very fast. And I think that that's one thing that, you can always keep in, just in the back of your mind. So a lot of guys get dumped money at a young age. They don't know what to do with it. It's a lot of money. And the only thing you can think about is all the things that you ever wanted in life. For me, I got dumped all that money, and then I got hurt before the first game. So my path was I was hurt, and I realized that, okay, this money won't last past me not staying healthy. So if I want to make more money, I have to stay healthy. And I think that kind of channeled me into utilize my money as my biggest investment on myself, because the only way that you can grow is if you invest in yourself. So I invested in myself, made sure that I ate the proper diets, saw the proper doctors, and put in all the extra work that was required for me to stay on the field. And I think that a lot of those guys don't make those choices. They think that money will always be there, and sadly mistaken, it's not. And they live paycheck to paycheck. I got paid $250,000 every 2 weeks my last couple of years in the NFL. Guys will literally take that and spend half of it and go, well, I'll play next week. Well, what happens if next week you get hit and you don't make any of that money anymore? You have to make decisions, and you have to be disciplined, and you have to be able to systemize everything. But then again, I played in Green Bay. very small, tight-knit community. I played with Hall of Famers who made a lot of money, sustained a lot of money, and that took everything for business. And I was able to mold myself and attach myself to those players. And I think that that's what propelled me. But the generation of those type of players are fading out big time.
No, I love it. And it's no different for any of us that, you know, didn't have the exposure of the NFL. It's who you surround yourself with, who your network is, who you're looking up to, and then what your intentions are. The other thing I think you said there that I love so much, because, you know, I've started to do this a lot more in the last 3 or 4 years myself, but invest in yourself. And a lot of times that means, you know, for you in the NFL, it was your body, your mind, you know, your ability to, you know, keep playing day to day. But as you're probably noticing, and we're going to lead into this here just in a second, in real estate, you need specific training, right? Like for me, I've taken a lot of new coaching classes, and I'm in some different masterminds and groups simply for that reason. These guys are all where I'm trying to get and I want to be. And so the only way to figure out how to do it is, like you said at the start of the call, is model what other people have done to get there. So man, there's so many parallels that I didn't really think would be there as obvious as you're telling your story with football that totally relate to real estate investing. So key for you, to summarize, was focusing on yourself, investing in yourself, but also having that bigger future, right? Like, this is going to end. Let's ride this as long as we can. Who's in the NFL that's doing really good things with their money, and how can I model them? So what are some examples of, well, let me say this, like when you were in that stage of getting hurt, did your mind already start going to the future, like what you wanted to do after? Did you have ideas that maybe haven't happened yet, you know, and ultimately getting into, how did you get into real estate?
When I first got hurt, the first 2 times, honestly, I didn't have a backup plan. I really didn't realize what I wanted to do. But this goes back to what I originally said, though. I didn't know what I wanted to do right away. But the thing is, my whole life has been built off the foundation of me being able to have that strong work ethic, to put my back against the wall, and no matter what it is that I'm trying to accomplish or do, I can achieve. And so with that being said, I really didn't have a piggyback or a second nature, or a plan that I wanted, you know, to see come, you know, manifest when I left the NFL. But what I did start, like, you know, just to sum it all up, what I really started doing was taking the opportunity to figure out how can I best sustain my career, and what's going to be the best vehicle for me to be able to continue to make the amount of money that I need to off the field that I can't on the field. So it wasn't later into my career, literally the last 2 years, when I had the opportunity to meet Julius Peppers, and he used to read all the time. And I'm like, why are you reading all the time? I'm like, who reads? Because I hated reading. And he was like, you know, he was like, I'm telling you right now, you better start opening up books. I kind of took it lightly, but literally when I left the NFL, I learned then and there, I should have opened up a book a little bit sooner. But to my defense, you don't really get told any of this when you walk into the NFL. It's just like, oh, you're this star, you're gonna make this amount of money, this is great, and yada, yada, yada. And nobody prepares you for the life after football. So I think that continual education between players is something that you have to look forward to, and where you can utilize and how to invest your money outside of that. But I didn't have a backup plan, to be 100% honest with you.
Well, it's working out. So before we transition into real estate, you know, we got to ask about your funnest moments in the NFL. Maybe it was the Super Bowl, maybe it wasn't, but give us a highlight into the highs of playing in the NFL when all the spotlight's on you. You know, what'd that feel like? What were some of your favorite fun moments when you were playing?
I can label a few, because I've had a lot of the things that happened to me didn't happen, you know, by coincidence. It was just literally hard work. My number one all time, honestly, is we were playing the Patriots. Tom Brady was a quarterback. It was in 2014, or it might have been 2015. They were number one offense in the AFC. We were number one offense in the NFC. So they called it the pre-Super Bowl showdown. We were actually up. They had the ball with 4 minutes to go. And if anybody follows me on Instagram, you probably will be able to find this clip. They were up with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They were in the red zone. They were literally about to drive and score a touchdown. We would have lost this game. It was third down. Tom Brady drop back, he tries to throw the ball. I sack him. The biggest play in my career. Not only did I have the opportunity to sack Tom Brady, but we won that game. Needless to say, we lost in the NFC Championship game to Seattle in the last 3 minutes, which sucked. We had an onside kick that one of my teammates fumbled, and Seattle picked it up. It was like a 90% chance that we would have lost that game, and that would have been my second Super Bowl. But that was just one of the highlights, and I've had plenty of them. I've had the opportunity to play against Peyton Manning. I got a chance to sack him. Donovan McNabb, my rookie year, I was able to sack him. Got a chance to play against Brett Favre. I've gotten a chance to play against, just literally Hall of Famers, and sustain it and play good. And like I said, I started almost every game my last 4 years. So it was fun, man. Like I said, I could never take anything from it. That the heat of the moment, being on that field, having everybody cheering for you, is just a feeling that you can't recreate. You can only dream about it after it's over and done. So it was great.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So all good things have to come to an end and transition into something else. So talk a little bit about, your final games year, that final year in Green Bay, and when you kind of knew like, okay, this is over, now what? What's next?
So I told you, I played with a lot of injuries. Going into my last year, I had a bilateral sports hernia repair, and then they did a hip repair. They repaired some cartilage, or supposedly repaired some cartilage in my hip. But needless to say, to make a long story short, it wasn't. They did a microfracture surgery in my hip that caused extreme amounts of swelling, cyst inside of the joint. I had no cartilage. And I played 12 games with no cartilage and inflammation in my hip, to the point where I had my cook, who was one of my college friends who moved in with me at the time. He would literally practically carry me to the stadium. I could barely walk. It was that serious. But I was able to play every snap. But I still enjoyed that. But after the season, I didn't really realize how bad it was until I went to a doctor, and he was like, "Mike, you're gonna have surgery. This doesn't look good." Actually, I take that back. I flew out to Seattle because I was going to sign with Seattle that offseason. I knew my time in Green Bay was going to be over with. I failed a physical. I flew straight from Seattle. I flew over to Detroit. I failed another physical. So from that standpoint, I'm like, okay, something's going on with this hip. I flew directly from Detroit to Tennessee to see one of the biggest specialists in the U.S. on hips. He's like, we can do one test. It won't take nothing but an hour, and I can tell you what's going to happen next. Told me I had to have surgery, and I might have to miss a year and a half. Flew to Minnesota, where I have my personal doctor who's worked on me every year and got me back on the field to be able to play. And literally, he sent me to go get an MRI. I remember getting back to his house, and he was like, "Mikey, you ready to sit down and talk about this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And his face was like completely beet red. And I'm like, "Josh, what's going on?" And he was like, never in 20 years have I had to literally tell somebody, like, listen, you don't need to play another season. He's like, you can probably get steroid injections in your hip that'll probably get you through another year or two, but you need a hip replacement. I'm like, Doc, I'm 28 years old, 27 years old. And that's like literally when I had to come to, and I had just had my son. I had my daughter 2 years prior to that. And then literally it was just more for me, just, I want to be there with my kids. I signed another deal. I made a lot of money. And at that point in time, honestly, from all the surgeries and things that I encountered, I was tired. I needed a break. But that's not to say I didn't spend $200,000 in one off season trying to get my hip together, because I sure did. But, it's just those moments when you realize that, like I told you before, I have this foundation, which is me. I know I can work. I know everything that I deserve. I know everything that I'm willing to work for. And I'm like, I'll be okay. I'll leave the game. I have enough money to make it. And I'll figure out another course of action. And that's literally what happened. A year and a half after I finally retired, like maybe a half a year after I found out about my hip. But, I started trying to figure out what I wanted to do next.
So, yeah, that's awesome. I can't imagine the pain and the kind of probably the disappointment, the realization of like, okay, my body might be done doing this, right? Like, what are we going to do next? So what did you experiment with, and how did you end up kind of pursuing a real estate career? Did you try things that didn't work, or did you, how did you get here to where you're at today?
Well, I'll tell you what, I learned a lot. I picked up books and I started reading. I financially educated myself on the best ways to save money, minimize the cost coming out of my pocket. I have an uncle that actually lives in California who's really, really, really great financially. I mean, he worked on the police department and retired just a couple of months ago with a couple million in assets and money in the bank. And that just attributes to his hard work and his financial discipline. So I consulted him. He sent me a bunch of things to read just on how to save my money. So I did a good job reducing my costs right away, boosting my credit up ridiculously out of the sky. So I didn't have to put a lot of money down on things that I wanted if I had to buy anything, and just being financially strong for about a year and a half I just understood like, okay, I can't waste money. I have to sustain it and figure out what I want to do next. And so one of my friends that I played with in Green Bay, he was an outside linebacker at the time too. His name was Desmond Moses. He was in Kansas. He left. He got his real estate license. And I saw him posting a lot of pictures one year, and I'm like, dude, do you really like this real estate thing? He was like, yeah, but if I were you, I wouldn't be a realtor. He was like, you need to look into investments. You have capital, you might want to be able to get into the investment side of it. And so literally a week after that, I reached out to my agent that sold me my house, because he literally became one of my good friends, just as a point of reference, because I moved to Florida. I had no family there. And he was like, yeah, I think you should do it. So I had the opportunity to sit down with Vincent Jackson, who actually owns CTV Capital down in Florida. And he was doing flips and was in a little bit of the retail business, and had a conversation with him. I got licensed that year. I went and attended a brokerage meeting with Keller Williams. I hung my license there. I quickly figured out within 6 or 7 months that I hated being a realtor. I wasn't a salesperson. I'm so used to people asking me for autograph that I don't know how to go ask somebody to buy their house or sell a house for them. And so I just started doing a lot of research, man. And a lot of local investors here that I ran into, just learned things from, and fumbled into Ron LeGrand. And Ron LeGrand is where I ended up settling at and learned a lot from him. He's another investor here in Florida. And that's kind of like where it all took off for me.
No, that's awesome. So what is your focus today? Kind of just exclusively talking real estate here. So what have you done different training, or like I know maybe the realtor thing isn't like the passion. You and I talked about some, seller finance sandwich subject too that you were doing. Kind of like what are the things in real estate that get you excited right now?
The cool thing is that I think that I wanted to take the path of least resistance, to be honest with you. I didn't want to have to come out of my pocket. I don't like to take a lot of big risk. And I say that because I like to have educated risk. There's a difference between just taking a risk and then there's a calculated risk. I didn't want to take anything that wasn't a calculated risk that I didn't have any knowledge or information on. And so that was the biggest thing for me. Like wholesaling, I learned a lot about that, but I still didn't know systems and processes, and I still didn't know people to teach me those things. And it wasn't until I got with a local investor here, Lee Kearney, who actually does a lot of deals and a lot of sales volume all over the US. He showed me what he was doing. And then one time I literally looked at him on social media. He was sitting with Ron LeGrand on one of Ron's programs, read it. He was kind of local, drove over there. I learned creative financing. And I think that that's kind of where I settled, because it's very low overhead. You can get into deals with little to nothing down, or you can get into deals where you lease option these properties where you don't put anything down and you just create a term for the seller, and you can get these big non-refundable option deposits. So I kind of took a liking to the creative financing department of it. We did really, really well within 7 months, being able to generate about $150,000 worth of non-refundable option deposits with a little bit of cash flow. And so that's kind of like where I stuck into it. The trainers that I've actually been associated with was Ron. Ron kind of introduced me to Nate Armstrong, which is how I got connected with Chris. I'm now a part of Advisors Council here in Florida with Real Advisors. I'm still in Nate's program. I'm here at Chris Kelly, who's a big time flipper down here in Florida, who does a lot of hotel deals. I'm at his event now learning about his strategies and his systems. So those are the type of people that I'm actually incorporated with. We have very, very, very high producing people in my private groups here, as well as in Nate's private group as well. So I think that when you surround yourself with these people, subliminally, you don't have a chance but to elevate, because all you're constantly listening to is people elevating. And so when you go home, you have no choice but to elevate, because what your mind focuses on literally is what gets put in front of your lap. So I think that all these, just me being incorporated with these people, being in these trainings, have literally kicked open doors for me. And I'm overwhelmed with with the amount of love that people give me, and just the information I'm learning. So now I'm just systemizing my own business. I mean, I'm learning it as I go, but I enjoy it.
Oh, it's what you said there rings so true. I remember I went back to school a few years ago and got my master's of real estate development. And at the time, I really didn't know why I was doing it, but it was kind of more to like jumpstart, where I was at in life. And I kind of felt like I was in a little bit of a rut, but it is crazy once you put yourself in that room where, all the people we were getting taught daily, and there were guest speakers coming in talking about these different apartments that they owned and multifamily. And, before I knew it, next thing I know, I'd bought my first apartment, and it was like, I think I had the capability to do that, but I just maybe wasn't in the right room to kind of elevate myself, like you said. So I think what you're doing is super smart. And, a lot of the investors on the call here, or they're going to watch it later, are just going to be nodding their head going, yep, that's why I go to the RIA meetings. Yep. That's why I take this training, yep. That's why I do this. That's why I do that. But, I was thinking it's got to be a little bit of a trip for you every once in a while to think back when you think about the money, right? Like, and the money comes when you put in the work, but it's got to be a little trip every once in a while to go like, well, wait, where's that 250,000 every other week? Like, has that been hard to get over, those big lumps and those big chunks in trying to then, this new income path with real estate?
Yeah, it's probably one of the hardest things. It's easy to make money. It's a lot harder to save money. And I don't think that people really understand that. And I had one of my doctors tell me all the time, he was like, the real flex is when you can actually sit on your capital and not spend it. And so that's the biggest thing that I've always focused on, is minimizing the amount of money that, I'm seeping out of my pocket, and trying to keep as much as I can in. But because I've gathered a lot of assets, because I've put myself in a position to not have to need that money right away, and to be able to reduce, my monthly costs and expenses, it's been able to give me, just time to develop in real estate. Now, like you said, I'm used to the big paychecks. It's very difficult because, I still have a lot of things that I have to pay for. I still have my own personal mortgage, my parents' mortgage, and, there's still bills and things like that. But at the end of the day, I know that regardless of which, I've had to start from the bottom every single time, and I've had to work my way up to the top. And I'm new to this, very, very new to this. Within 2 years, the things that I've learned and have accomplished, and I really haven't taken this serious until the last year and a half. And I've already grown a lot. And I have to tell myself that I'm a high producing type of person. I want success overnight, but I feel like because I don't sleep overnight, I should have success overnight. Yeah. But that's just not how it works. I mean, you have to feel your way. You have to find an avenue. You have to pick it. You have to study it. You have to research it. You have to jump in everybody's hip pocket that understands exactly what it is you're trying to get. Make sure you link up with the right mentors. And then after you've done all your research, your due diligence, and you've come down to minimizing the amount of risk, now you take that approach and you take it and run with it. And that's the position that I'm in now. I'm learning that, I have to be very direct in my approach. The things that I want to do, I have to have goals. I have to have one avenue that I want to take advantage of. And that's just, like I said, that's where I'm at now. And it's a comfortable space to be in, because I know that eventually, it'll crack to exactly what I want it to be.
Well, and you said the word earlier in the call, humble. It's also got to be really humbling to, not be on the field and maybe not be rubbing shoulders daily with, some of those higher profile athletes that everybody has, posters of on their walls and stuff like that. And then to realize like, oh, okay, I got to go, like Joe Blow's like me, like you're talking with me, like you gotta then kind of mingle with the regular folk to get back on track with what you want to do. But in real estate, these guys are the NFL stars of the local real estate world, right? So you're going back to them to learn and how to grow. But I'm sure it's been a little bit humbling as well, not just kind of like, oh, wow, where's all this money? It's not coming in like it used to yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're not the big dog in the room anymore. And I think that that's what's different. It's like walking back into the locker room when you're a freshman in college. and you have all these seniors and you're trying to get to where the seniors are at, and you know that the only way that you're going to be able to get there is you have to do your time. It takes time. It takes a lot of that determination. And like I said before, you're not that big dog in the room anymore. And that's a little bit intimidating, to be 100% honest with you as well, because I'm not used to that. So it's really me having to relearn how to operate, like you said, in society. I mean, when you're in the NFL, they give you everything. I had an assistant. Like, I never missed a flight, because if I missed a flight, like literally one time she called and had a plane held. How do you do that? I don't know, but I never went to a regular doctor. So like when I left the NFL and I'm like, I have to go to the doctor. I'm like, I'm calling my sister, like, what do I do? Like, I don't know how to go to a doctor. Like, I don't know what a copay is. And so you have to relearn life. And that's, like I said before, things that they don't tell you in the NFL. So that's very humbling. And then to move a whole family to Florida, that's humbling as well, because now I don't have my parents, I don't have babysitters. It's me, my children, my children's mom, and we're having to try to make it work. I don't know a thing about how to, financially keep myself stable. I'm just listening to people tell me things all the time. So it's very humbling. But, like I said before, some people might take it and get scared and run away from it. But for me, I'm like one of those people that want to know it all. And just like I told you before, I didn't like to read. If I don't know something, I'll go pick up a book and literally try to demolish that whole book in 2 days, because I want to know it. I don't like to feel like I'm being talked over or overlooked. So if I have to educate myself before I go into the event, I will spend 2 or 3 days before I walk into the event studying that, just so I can have this much of a little bit of knowledge and I'm not lost, and then I can actually digest what they're telling me. So it's humbling though. I mean, but it's also fun because, what's life without pressure?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Well, you've been so great. And I know you took time away from your conference and you're learning right now. And so we're wrapping up right now. And I'm going to send you one of my favorite books, and I'll text you after and get a good address that I can mail it to. So it's a book I've loved. It's called Who Not How. It's finding your who's to help you with the hows that you have. It's not always how you're going to do it. It's who's going to help you to do it and who's going to help you get there. But one kind of question I'd like to ask people kind of as we wrap up is we've kind of spent this whole time talking about where you've come from, where you're at now, but like, what's your bigger vision now with where you're at now, today, whether it be real estate or whatever? Like, where do you see yourself? Where's Mike Neal in 3 years? What kind of goals do you have out there that you're trying to crush now that you're back, kind of in the regular world and starting your real estate path?
Well, you know what? I dream big. I think that first and foremost, I would like to be able to create, positive cash flow opportunities. I don't want to burn a hole in my personal assets, paying for things that I shouldn't have to. I think that real estate is a big vehicle for me to be able to do so. Mike Neal is infatuated with his kids. He has separation anxiety from his kids. He is an all-time dad. So I want to be there for every waking moment of my kids. They're starting to get into sports, and I like to be there for them. But right now, what I'm focusing on at this very moment is to be able to set myself up in a position to not only start my own business, to have my own small company, but to utilize that company and to be able to get back a little bit more. I'd never liked social media, but social media is a way that, this generation is taking. There's a lot of positive things that can come from social media. I think that my presence is a lot better felt on social media as being some, inspirational, motivational to, even if you did make it to the NFL, I mean, regardless of whatever it is, it takes hard work and dedication. I mean, I don't care if it's losing weight. I don't care if it's running a marathon. I don't care what it is, but, just that mindset, you have to be able to have that. So my thing is to be able to generate a company that not only are my employees taken care of, they love to do what they want, love to do what they can, love to do what they want to do, that they have streams of income coming in, and that they prosper from there. And, I can use a little bit of that money to do marketing things and be able to raise a lot of capital, buy a lot of real estate, and play Monopoly with money. I mean, that's the end all be all when it comes to real estate. So, that's what I'm looking forward to do.
Well, I love it. And I'll personally continue to follow you. And I know that we'll connect offline and whatever my network or anyone on this call can do to help or provide insight or help with real estate, we're all about it. And hopefully we'll be involved in some deals, whether, helping fund one or, getting creative or buying something there in Florida. I'm all about it. So again, I really appreciate your time, and I know we all do. And thanks so much for taking it. And we'll continue to follow your journey, man. I really, really appreciate it. And have a great day, Mike.
Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate it. And like you said, man, I do have some questions I want to run by you. I just haven't had the time yet, but I'm glad that we actually connected. I don't think that anything happens by coincidence. I think that we're supposed to connect, and this was supposed to be done. And like I said, I appreciate it. And if you ever need anything from me, you have my personal cell phone number. If there's anybody on this call that actually wants to get a hold of me, I don't like to be that person, but you can Google, I think, my Twitter handles and Facebook handles and all that stuff. I'm terrible at social media. So if you find me and you send me a message, I'll definitely reply. And like I said, thanks, Matt. And let's connect again.
Okay, let's do it. Go have a great rest of your day. Thanks everybody for joining. And Mike, we'll connect later offline. So have a good rest of your day. Thanks again, buddy.